Hey guys, Fire here, bringing you another game review. This time we're checking out Ario. This game is developed by Vada Games, published by Artax Games, and will be available on March 28th, 2024. Unfortunately, I don't quite know the price for this game, but let's talk about this. It's 2.5D action adventure slash platformer style game. So, what is Ario? Basically, it's a 2.5D story where your mother's been kidnapped and then you get thrown into these crazy encounters having to use stealth action, combat, arrow, and even tower defense all mixed into a game that kind of throws a lot of content at you and has an okay rhythm, but at times it does occasionally get kind of dull. So let's talk about the things that I really enjoy the most. Right off the bat, when you first start the game out, you're gonna want to go and turn on subtitles. The game has English variants, but all of the characters and the dialogue in the game is kind of just this gibberish language that makes me just wish they would have went ahead and just narrated out the game and had some voice acting versus just the mumbling that kind of occurs throughout. The controls are actually really easy to get a hold of, down to a couple issues when you might run into finickiness when you try to do rolls or you try to do other different things and you just have no way to really kind of navigate those zones. It does get a little frustrating when you do like certain areas where you need to roll or wall jump, or just enemies seem to just ultimately kind of block you into certain areas, and you kind of have to learn how to navigate those zones along the way. Now, there's a good bit of levels and a lot of content here within the game. The platforming is done really well, and the puzzles within the game are actually really, really good. There's some of my favorite puzzles. Games that you might relate this game to a little bit might be games like Prince of Persia or some of the Assassin's Creed. There was some like 2.5D like games that they made way back in the 360 era, and I think they reimagined some of them on Xbox One. They might have been early Xbox One actually, but they're still there for you to play, and this is definitely the kind of game it reminds me of. I love the visual aesthetics of the game. It's done really well. The levels are beautiful, and the enemies are, although varying, not too difficult, but honestly designed pretty well. As you can see, some of the little clipping that I was talking about there with just how some of your movements and button responses, I think could use just a little bit of fine tuning with the game, but it is something that I think that they could work on, and with just a little bit of quality of life improvements into TLC would add a much better experience with the game for most players. Outside of that, it's not anything that's going to be too unbearable. It's just going to be, like I said, little bits of things that they can tweak on. So the things that I really enjoy and what are the biggest highlights for me are kind of these little tower defense sequences that you're going to kind of see right here that are mixed throughout the levels. And they just add a ton of fun content with the game where you get to do these like little like ride along arrow kind of bullet shots. Kind of reminds me of the sniper games series where like you get to follow your shots and kind of just kill all the enemies and try to hit precision targets. The game does a really good job with this kind of tower defense mechanic, especially as you get later in the game. They get challenging and they get really rewarding all at the same time, and it's just a really good package of content that they mix into the game that it didn't need to have it, but I'm really glad they did, because it definitely gives the game some props there. Now let's just talk a little bit about the story. The story's done pretty well. Again, if you don't turn on subtitles, you're probably not going to enjoy this story by any means at all, because you're not going to really understand anything that's going on. I had to quickly figure that out after a mission or two in the game. I was able to get subtitles on and then be able to kind of just start using and going through the content after that. It's okay. It kind of gets bland at times. I think the gameplay is going to overshadow the story by far, and the nice mix in with the difficulties of varying puzzles and challenges that you have to figure out are just kind of overshadow the story. It's there. Are you going to care too much about it? Will you probably start hitting A to skip through some of those sequences? Probably, because that's ultimately like what I ended up doing as the story got going. I love the built-in little skip mechanism that's not just load to the next thing, but it kind of like fast forwards as you go through cutscenes after you've died once or twice in the past, and it's just kind of done really well. Now, speaking of levels, the game has these kind of checkpointed, segmented levels throughout the game as you play, so it gives you a good opportunity to go back and collect anything if you might need for achievements or anything like that. Outside of that, guys, I think Ario is a really fun game. I think they did a really good job. I think there's some quality of life improvements from the control standpoint of the game, but it is a good 2.5D platformer with decent playability, and I think one that's pretty enjoyable. Unfortunately, again, I don't know the price for the game right now, so I guess if the game came anywhere around that $20 to $25 price point, I think that'd be a solid price for Ario. Outside of that, guys, let me know what you think of my review down below in the comments. I appreciate you hanging out with me and checking out my channel, and I hope to see you again soon.